Okay, here we go. Third time's a charm. Technical difficulties this morning. I'm working on recording this as a podcast at the same time, and I thought I had it figured out, and I didn't. So I'll work on it and do it next week. Anyways, thanks for everyone being here this morning. As you join in the conversation. As you know, we've been talking about my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. Good morning, Bob. How are you? We've been talking about my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. We're in chapter 3, trauma triggers. Trauma triggers is an important subject because a lot of times people react. Morning, Elaine. A lot of people will react to something we say or do, and it's way out of character for them, and we can't figure out why they might be acting that way. And we want to take things personally. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with us. Actually, most of the time it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with something in their past that they just all of a sudden were getting triggered for. So it's important that we understand what trauma triggers are. I know in recovery for alcoholics and addicts and such, we talk about you got to know your triggers. You got to know your triggers. What's going to cause you to drink? What's going to cause you to drink? Well, this is part of it, but more importantly, if we don't know how to deal with the triggers, that's what's going to lead us back to drinking. Because for a lot of us that are in recovery, these triggers come up, emotions and feelings come up that we're unaware of and we haven't felt for a long time. We don't know how to deal with them. And our quick fix, our instant relief, our default button is to hit the bottle or hit a pipe or a line of cocaine or something like that. So we automatically turn to that. So it's important that we learn about these triggers. And as we grow in recovery, even not in recovery, just as you're growing in life, period, if you're trying to better yourself and become a better person, these triggers need to be recognized because they can resolve a lot of personal issues between you and your friends, employers, you and your spouse. Communication is a huge part of it. So it's really important that we learn about these triggers. So I think I believe last week we talked about what trauma triggers are, how they kind of go off on us once in a while. Another really important part about trauma triggers is the communication, being able to communicate to our loved ones, to our sponsors, to our friends, to our therapists, to our spouses, to the people that mean a lot to us in our life about trauma triggers, that you're going to need their help along the way. A lot of times you won't even know that you're going into a trauma trance, but if your partner knows you good enough, as mine does, they can always tell before I get into it. Or once I get into it, they can tell me, Randy, what's triggering you? Okay. So today we're going to talk about that specific thing about communicating. There's, I think it's like the second part of the first chapter, or the third chapter of my book. There's quite a bit on trauma triggers in there. But I want to start by a quote by Aphrodite. I'm probably going to blow this, but Mataskis, PhD, on trauma triggers. He says having triggers or reacting to them does not mean you are crazy or defective. However, when you are blind to what you are feeling and why you are feeling it, you may be driven to act in ways that do not serve you well. So, hey, Ellie. So a lot of times when we're triggered and we act out of character, people are going to look at us like, what is wrong with him? What is wrong with her? And we actually feel like we're crazy ourselves. Why am I acting that way? Where'd that come from? It might be a conversation that you've had countless times with a loved one, with a friend. Morning, Aunt Jean. It might be a conversation you've had countless times with a loved one, with a friend, with a pastor even, or a mentor, or employer or employee. And for some reason, just the way they said it, the way they look at you, or it just might be because all of a sudden you were reminded of something from your past that triggers you. And you can go off in ways such as you can either be in a way of rage. Mostly that's how I would do it. When I was triggered, it would be rage or self-doubt or self-loathing. So we just need to be aware of it. And a lot of times when the abuse is happening to us of any kind, okay, remember, my primary thing is sexual abuse of men because we don't talk about it. But when I'm talking about abuse, there's countless different kinds of abuse I want you to consider. Don't sit there and say, well, I can't relate to that, Randy, because I wasn't sexually abused. No, but I guarantee you at some point in your life, you've all been emotionally abused or physically abused or spiritually abused, okay? So just open mind when we're talking about this. But while the abuse is happening to us, I know for myself and a lot of people that I've talked to, we just suppress the natural feelings of rage, fear, and blame. We just suppress them. We don't go there because, particularly in my case, I was told I can't be angry. Well, you're being ridiculous. I mean, countless things that were said to me that discounted my feelings and my fears. So instead, I let that stuff build up inside of me. People, why is he so angry? Well, remember that even the Bible says, be angry, do not sin, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Okay? So the Bible says it's okay to be angry. But what happens is because we repress it for so long, it sits in there and it just keeps brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing. And one day it's like it just boils over and then we blow up. And so what they're seeing is they're not seeing anger, they're seeing the repressed anger, which just comes out in the form of rage. So we really need to understand that anger is perfectly okay. But many of us are taught that we can't be angry, so we repress it, okay? So what happens is, because we didn't deal with these feelings at the time that they came about, right? In our later years, they're going to come up. And when they come up, they're going to make us feel really terrible. There's going to be some ugly feelings inside of us. They can trigger emotions like sadness, okay, irritability. Shame's a big one. I think for a lot of people, shame is probably one of the biggest ones that there is, because a lot of us that have been abused of any kind, right? And it could be simple verbal abuse, never felt like we were good enough. And we were shamed in a lot of ways instead of being taught that, hey, you made a mistake and it's okay. And the other side of that is we were shamed into believing that what we were doing was absolutely wrong and we didn't belong here on the earth. So it comes up as shame, comes as hopelessness, and then again, the biggest one that it comes up as a lot of times is rage. Okay, there's a lot of more subtle ones, but those are the main ones right there. Then I know for myself early on, once that trigger hit me and I acted out on it, then I started judging myself really harshly. I guess I am just a piece of garbage, and I can't believe I just did that. And these people I love, and I'm treating them like crap, and blah 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 blah. Okay, but now, because of the communication I have with my wife, loved ones, and friends, I don't judge myself harshly anymore. It's when it comes up, first of all, I work really hard on catching it, and if I don't, I was triggered. Kathy knows it, my wife knows it, my friends know it. Hey, Daniel, what's up, man? Good to see you. So it's nothing to be judged harshly about, because triggers are very subtle. And I'll tell you a little story. You probably heard it before. I want to repeat it here in just a little bit about how the trigger really got me in a lot of trouble one day. And from the outsider's perspective, when we do react, they look at us like we're overreacting. Okay. But for us survivors, or doesn't matter, for us as people, the emotional response feels entirely appropriate. We feel as though that person hurt us, and our only response is that little kid that's inside of us. The only thing he knows how to do is act out and react instead of respond. So part of the journey is learning how to respond rather than react in any of these situations. The most important part of my recovery has been communication with my loved ones. It's absolutely essential, and it's a key to the emotional growth for myself and for me and my wife, me and my children, me and my loved ones, the ones I mentor, the people that are in my life that I count on. The communication, even if I blow up and I make that mistake, is to go back to them and say, hey, I am so sorry. It wasn't anything you did or said. Here's another quick example. I used to get pinched underneath the arm all the time by my stepbrothers, my stepfather, and they just laughed. And if I cried, they pinched me harder. And they said, "What are you crying about? It doesn't hurt." So about, I don't know, probably 9 years ago, I was in the gym. A really good friend of mine was in there. And I was at the drinking fountain, and he came up behind me, and he grabbed a hold of my arm right here. Now, when I was a kid, I could never defend myself. And this guy was quite a bit bigger than me. But as he's grabbing me, I says, "Craig, let go of my arm now." And every time I said that, he pinched harder. I says, "Craig, let go of my arm now." And he wouldn't do it. I said, "This is the last time, Craig. You better let go of my arm." For the first time in my life, I turned with a fist. I was looking at his smiling face because he was laughing, and thank God I didn't hit him there. But I hit him as hard as I could in the left part of his chest. And he started coming after me. And fortunately, there was my trainer was there, and he got between us. Later that day, or within the hour, I went to Craig. And I told him, "Craig, I'm sorry for doing that. Here's the situation. As a kid growing up, I was pinched all the time. I could never defend myself. The more I defended myself, the more they pinched me. I gave you 3 warnings and you didn't let go, and I just reacted this time." And he understood, and he apologized for his actions. I also apologized for mine. So triggers, they're going to come up when you least expect them. Okay, so if you're with somebody that they're asking you, "Hey man, really, I don't appreciate you talking to me that way," don't heckle them. Don't make fun of them. You don't know what's going on inside their head. You could be triggering them, and you want to avoid triggering people every chance you get, because you never know what's going to come out of that person once they're triggered. I'm just giving you a fair warning, okay? And that's just the truth of it. So those behaviors and responses feel absolutely appropriate, they're not. But for the time being, they helped us get out of the thing. So the communication with our loved one is absolutely important. It's really important that we're able to clearly and lovingly state our needs to our loved ones before we're triggered. Okay? When they see, like I said, when they see us acting up, don't heckle us, don't continue the argument, but instead say, "Hey, like Kathy, she knows me inside and out. She can see when I might be falling back into myself or when things are bothering me." Okay. And vice versa. She still gets triggered too. She can get triggered too. Okay. So we look out for each other, and we're not perfect at it. We still blow it and we still trigger each other, but that's because we're human beings. But we work on, if I know these things are going to trigger me, then I'm not going to intentionally trigger Kathy, and she's not going to intentionally trigger me. Instead, we'll talk about it. "Hey, it looks like you might be getting triggered. Did I say something wrong?" Okay. So it's really important. Communication. Kathy and I are so big on communication. Look, the reality is, how many of us really learned how to communicate as children? Be honest about it. I tell you, we work with a lot of couples, and none of them, they all say the same thing. I didn't know how to communicate. So Kathy and I are big on the communication process. Okay. It's vital for long-term, I'll say, recovery, for happiness, for health, especially in a relationship. You could both be sitting there steaming about something, but you're afraid to talk to your partner because in the past, when you brought up how you felt, a parent, a guardian, somebody put you down and said you have no right to feel that way. So now you're walking around in this relationship that with somebody that you love dearly and you want to be close to, but you got these resentments because you're afraid to talk to them. So that's what Kathy and I work on with couples a lot, is the communication. It's vital for any kind of relationship. Okay. And what happens is a lot of times when these triggers come up that are subtle, okay, we're unaware that we're reacting to a past trauma, and that's basically, and so is your partner, or so is your employer or your employee or your friend. They're unaware that you're actually acting out on a past trauma. It's something that happened a long time ago, and they just for some reason at that point in time, what they said, what they did, the way they smelled, the way they looked, a number of different things reminded you of something very similar in the past that really upset you that you had no control over. And so you react. As we start dealing with our abuse issues, like I said, we all have some. There's nobody that has escaped childhood without some form of trauma or some form of abuse. It's spiritual or emotional. It might not be physical. It might not be sexual. For me, I had like the whole gamut, but emotional is probably by far the worst. Okay. I lost my there it is. Sorry. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. So what happens is we will become hypersensitive when we start dealing with this in our recovery. We'll become hypersensitive to experiences that remind us of the abuse that we went through or of the event that happened that we're being triggered by. So because a lot of us for many years, it was drugs and alcohol that covered up. It helped us deal with our childhood traumas. Hello, Linda. It helped us deal with our childhood traumas, whatever those might have been. We didn't have an escape. We didn't know how to escape the feelings. And a lot of times our friends, for me, it was like, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people not to judge me. I was getting tired of being beat up all the time. I was getting tired of not being loved by my parents, that I just wanted that acceptance. Although I had my grandmother, my aunt, who's listening right now, they loved me unconditionally. But it wasn't enough at that point in time. It was enough. Now I realize it was enough because it kept me on the right track, even though I slid down the wrong side for a while. Okay. But what I did is because I wanted that acceptance, and I needed something just to suppress the pain and the shame that I was feeling, and just to get away, the drugs and the alcohol. So for 38 years, that's all. I mean, I numbed my feelings with drugs and alcohol. A good thing happened, oh boy, let's celebrate. Let's have drugs or alcohol. Bad thing happened, drugs or alcohol. I mean, it didn't matter. Anything that happened, because I didn't know how to deal with the feelings, good, bad, or indifferent, drugs and alcohol was the answer to repress them. So I never learned how to deal with the good. I never learned how to deal with the bad. So basically the drugs and alcohol just shut down all those feelings. So what happens is when we stop using the drugs and alcohol, and I'm going to be real honest and blunt and upfront right here, forget even trying to recover if you're going to keep using and drinking. It's not going to work because you're not yourself. You're cutting yourself up for God. And I don't care what anybody tells you what you think. Believe me, you are cutting yourself off from the love of Christ if you're drinking and using drugs all the time. Okay. It just, and I know that for a fact because I experienced it and I've talked to others the same thing. And even licensed therapists will say, you know what, if you're going to keep drinking and using, you're going to keep having these problems, right? Because what happens is you keep sliding back into your default button. Because the thing is, in order to heal from these things, and it's like tell men all the time and couples, you have to walk through the pain and shame of your past one more time because you have denied it. You have not dealt with it for years. It's not going nowhere. And so what we do is we walk with you out of that mess. Okay. So for me, what I was just nothing but a walking emotional wound. I was feeling hurt by anything and everything that touched me. It didn't matter. I mean, you could compliment me and I didn't feel I got hurt by it. It just, I was a mess. Okay. Here's some of the things like with trauma that I want to explain. And I might have talked about this before, but let's just say you're driving down the road. These are real simple examples that I can bring up. You're driving down the road. And one of the big things that we talk about and we work with our people about is quit taking things personally. Okay? Nothing's personal, but we always take it personal. Well, how do we do that, Randy, when they're attacking me? It's not personal. Here's the simplest example, and I'll give a couple. One is you're driving down the road on a sunny day. Beautiful day. You might be doing 5 miles over the speed limit. Everybody's just having a ball. You got your sunroof down and you're listening to music. You're with your wife. You're with your kids. Everything's cool. You got some guy riding up on your butt, honking his horn. He's just pissed off at you. As he flies by you, he flips you the bird, screaming and yelling out the window something you can't hear. Do you really honestly think that had anything to do with you? You're simply enjoying the day with your family. You're not doing anything wrong. What happened to that guy before he left the house? Did his wife get a bad report from the doctor? Did his son just get thrown in jail? Was somebody killed in a car accident? Okay, what was going on in his life? You just happened to be the first person he ran across and he just unleashed on you. I'm not saying it's right, but it had nothing to do with you. So don't take it personal. I used to. I said, oh yeah, you want to do that? I'm going to chase you down the road. You and I are going to have some fun for a while, right? And I would even go as far as stopping, get right on his tail. But that was my triggers being triggered because I wasn't in control at the moment, and I wasn't in control as a kid. So when anybody tried to overpower me, I wasn't going to let them. It just wasn't going to happen that way. There was another one where I lost what it was. Sorry, that's how I am. Okay, so we got to be careful. It's Don Miguel Ruiz. Here's the other. Don Miguel Ruiz in his book, The Four Agreements, says this. He says, you got to knock on the door. You go open the door. You open it, and somebody shoots you in the head. Don't take it personal. Now, that's a hard one. But let me ask you a question. The guy that knocked on the door that shot you in the head that doesn't even know you, how could that have anything to do with you? What was going on with that guy's life that he's so angry and upset and pissed off at the world that he's going to go up and pull the trigger in some guy's face that he doesn't even know? It wasn't you he was shooting. It was likely somebody from his past that had done the same thing to him, beat him, was rude to him. Okay? It's like when I hear the hate about pedophiles, and believe me, I don't like them either, but I don't hate them. And I hear people that want to kill them. What I'm hearing is they're killing their perpetrator because they've never confronted their perpetrator. I don't like the hate that's being spewed towards them. I understand it's a trigger, but it's not personal. And we have to learn to quit taking things so personal. The other thing that I got to do is I got to make sure that I'm supportive with these triggers. I got to make sure that I've given people permission to speak into my life that know me and that can remind me, Randy, you got triggered again. And maybe we should sit down. I'll have people that I trust that I can sit down and talk with that can help me work through my triggers as they come up and help me see things maybe from a different view. It's really important that we have those people in life. This is a journey that nobody can take by their own. You cannot do this alone, okay? And then when I would get triggered and I was able to reach out when I had the people I knew I could trust, then I could get the help and I could talk in a much clearer, calmer manner, okay? Again, the important thing about communication is I let my wife and all my friends in early recovery, I let them know that I would get triggered, and sometimes that trigger would come out as anger, and I wasn't trying to justify my actions. I was just letting them know that, hey, don't take my anger personally because I love you all, and sometimes it comes out sideways, and I would always make an amends if that was a problem. And like in almost every single case, they were extremely supportive through all this work, through the triggers when I was triggered. They had the right to walk away too, and I didn't care if they walked away because they were protecting themselves. I mean, I would fight it, but I knew what they were doing. A lot of times, like I say, they'll recognize it before I do, because they know me, and I've given them permission to know me and to speak into my life. I can get triggered even today on a daily basis, but I'm realizing I'm being triggered, and I can work my way through it. And that's just through prayer and understanding that, look, this isn't happening to me. Today, these people love me. They're not my stepfather. They're not my past or none of that. These people love me. They want the best for me. I have to deal with a lot of stuff that I disagree with. Okay. I have to accept everything. It doesn't mean I approve it. but I have to accept it. And that's my problem, nobody else's problem. So I have to learn to deal with it. Everybody has their own opinion, and that's okay. And sometimes it's okay to agree to disagree. Here's something that's really important. Whenever I'm sad or anxious or angry, okay, it is almost 100% of the time due to a past trigger and not the current situation. Okay, nobody has the power to make me angry. Nobody has the power to make me pick up a drink. Nobody has the power to make me do anything or say anything. There's only one person, and that's God. And nobody here on earth has that much power. Well, he made me do it. He did. Really. I didn't realize he was God. You made a choice to do it. The conversation might have triggered you. And because you didn't know you were being triggered, the only choice that you knew was to react. And your reactions were in a verbal or physical sense. You made the choice. Nobody made you do anything. The other choice you had was to walk away from the conversation and cool down. Okay. And I got to work on that a lot. I got to walk. Sometimes I want to get a point across, and it doesn't work. Yeah, I've got to learn to walk away and just shut down and be quiet. And Kathy and I are working real hard on all of that. You know, triggers aren't just limited to the obvious ones, which usually occur right after the trauma. So, you know, it could be, for instance, I was taking a shower a couple months ago. Man, I got triggered really bad. Just the shower, the smell of the water, it brought back some bad memories. And I was able to work through it. I was by myself. And there's times when God wants me to work through it by myself. And it's like, man, I don't feel comfortable right now in the shower. And I started thinking about when I used to go surfing, then I would come home from surf and I would take these hot showers by myself, listen to music, and then things would happen later on. It was just a bad feeling, but it wasn't happening to me now. It just triggered me to something I forgot about in the past. They can last for years, okay? That's the other thing. Don't think, well, you know, that happened to him a long time ago. Why is he still dealing with it? Because it's a trigger. And remember, people think, well, you come in recovery, I've accepted Christ, I've got recovery, I haven't drank, I haven't, whatever. You started this journey, you might be 6 months in it, and you're wondering why your wife still wants to leave you. You're wondering why everything's still going south in your life. Well, how many years were you behaving in a certain manner? How many years did you not know these triggers were there? How many years did you deny the triggers? So now that you're on this journey to find yourself, you've got to replace all this stuff. When we pull an asset out, we got a defect out, we have to replace it with an asset. Okay? So it takes time to relearn new behavior. Okay? Sanctification takes a lifetime and won't be complete until we're standing before God. Okay? What's up, Leo? It's a lifetime of work. Anybody that says, I'm there, they got a lot of work to do. We're doing freedom groups, and I actually had a lady go, well, Randy, what if I'm already there? What if I've already done all that stuff? Then you definitely need to come to freedom groups. You have to come to freedom groups. Because if you think you're there, you're not living accordingly to the Bible. And I'm not there. I got a long ways to go. Okay, so we got to be really careful thinking that just because we've been going to church or we've been sober and clean it's been almost 14 years for me, and I can still get triggered. Okay, it's just, but I recognize it. That's the whole difference, is I can start recognizing it. So what happens with those subtle triggers is they'll start with an innocuous experience, and they'll set off a whole cascade of the stressful thought patterns that you got, and then that leads to the spiral of negativity. A lot of times you don't even know what's happening; it just happens. And so I don't like being negative. I like to remain positive. So I'm learning all this, and I've been able to recognize, man, I'm being awful negative right now. What's going on? I've got to do a check. So I know I've told the story before. I know this is going to go a little bit long today. I can cut it off here in a minute. Thanks for hanging in there. This is really important. You know, I've told the story. It's actually in my book about with a big trigger for me was that when I was paying the bills and I asked Kathy to come in and go over them with me, and her comment, as always is, and it is true, that Randy, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. And I, oh, so upset that she said that, but it was true. So she went out in the room, was reading her book. I paid all the bills. I was in there brewing my pity party. I came out and says, Kath, I didn't like the way the conversation ended. It was very loving, very kind to her. And I would like to continue the discussion so we can talk about this a little bit further. And she's very simply said, Randy, she's reading a book, not now, but later, Randy. And I snapped. I absolutely snapped. She wanted to leave. I wanted to let her leave. You know, this was just 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, 2015, right before I released my book. I wouldn't let her leave. I mean, I was out of control, raging. When I calmed down, I go, what in God's name happened? Well, when Kathy said, not now, later, it wasn't Kathy that I heard. It was my mother. Because when my mother said that, not now, later meant never. I was triggered and I didn't know it. But once I got over the emotion part of it and I was able to sit down and figure out what went on, then I figured it out. Then I went back to Kathy and I explained to her. It's not an excuse, but it gave her clarity of why I acted the way I acted. Okay? So we need to be aware when things happen. We just don't overreact for no reason. Sometimes it could be something that we do, so we say, see, or smell at the time without negative effect, can suddenly. Kathy has said that to me countless times before, and all of a sudden, it throws me into the shame spiral for no apparent reason. Same thing she's told me countless times before. So it could be the same thing that you've listened to a song for the last 10 years. It's one of your favorite songs, and all of a sudden, it just throws you into the shame spiral, brings back memories you didn't know you had. So it can happen very, very subtly, okay? A lot of times it's not immediately apparent why they're happening. But again, the more people you communicate to what you're going through, and this has to be a very safe and sacred circle that you're talking about, people that you're with all the time, people that are on the journey with you, the more people you can let know what's going on, the better off you're going to have. And what happens is, as time goes and you practice this, it gets easier to find the source of the trauma trigger. So it's like, okay, so I was triggered by trauma. What was a trigger? Where'd that come from? Because you know why you acted the way you did, because you were triggered. But if you don't know what caused the why, how can you fix it? So it's really important you take some time with yourself, with your therapist, with your life coach, with your mentor, with your sponsor, whoever that is, and you talk about the situation and you go with an open mind and you do a little tiny time travel back into time, and you'll find it. It's there. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. And what happens also, what we want to do is survivors will blame all the people around them for their out of control emotions. Okay? Well, it's your fault. You said this and it made me do this. No, it's not. That might be true. You might have said something to them, right? And you might have said it with a different tone of voice. But again, you don't have the power to make them do anything. They don't want to. A lot of survivors, a lot of people, once they've been trauma triggered, they don't want to look at their part in it. You just don't understand, man. You can't talk to me that way. Well, no, I don't understand why you're acting this way and why I can't, because I've talked to you this way to you countless times. What's going on? Okay, emotions are a funny thing. And we think that if only other people would change, none of this would happen. I used to say about my wife, God, if she would just be more loving, I wouldn't have to blow up like this. It didn't matter how loving Kathy was at a certain point in our marriage for a period of time. It didn't really matter. She could be the kindest, lovingest woman in the world. And if I got triggered, she was going to hear about it. And that's not right, okay? Part of that is that control issue when we're triggered, okay? Because we're fighting and we're raging and we're sulking and we're indulging in destructive patterns because we want the other people to change. We're trying to get them to change. We're not looking at our part in it. I don't have a part in it. What you said triggered me. If you just quit talking to me that way, you need to change the way you talk to me. You need the way to change you look at me. No, it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with us. We have to look at our part in everything. accept abuse. Okay, but when we're talking with other people, why am I snapping at them? It's not their fault. We have to understand that. We need to look inside ourselves and start to become sensitive to our own trauma triggers. It's very important. It's not to say, though, in that we're shut down to our emotional responses when we're triggered. For one thing, that's absolutely impossible. We can't do it because when they come up and they hit us very, very subtly. Triggers are aptly named because it happens suddenly. It's like a quick trigger on a gun. It just, boom, it's there. We can't stop a bullet after we pull the trigger on a gun. So we have to let it run its course. Once it starts, even Kathy knows, once it starts, I don't care what she tells me. I don't care how loving, how kind she is. It's got to run its course. And then eventually I'll run out of energy and she'll go hide somewhere and I'll run out of energy and I'll go, oh man, what did I do? And then I can look back at what a knucklehead and why did I act that way? And there's also, you got to remember, there's going to be a lot of physical signs associated with the trauma triggers, okay, and a trauma trance. They'll help us to realize, like, for instance, me, when it starts to come on, I'll get flush, right? My face will get red. I'll get sweaty underneath the armpits. So I got to be able to recognize those and be able to stop myself. Once that starts happening, go, why is this happening? I better stop. This ain't cool. I shouldn't be getting flush face. My heart shouldn't be palpitating right now. My wife loves me. My employer cares for me. My pastor loves me. My best friend loves me. They're my friends. They're not my enemies, but yet I'm making them my enemies. I got to stop this now. Okay. And we all have memories. So we all have triggers. Every one of us do. It might only be one, but we all have triggers. Well, here's the good news, okay? Even people with happy, wonderful childhoods have triggers, okay? It's just the nature of the human brain, okay? But we can also have positive triggers. Certain smells, sounds, sights can put a smile on our face out of the blue, okay? What we don't want is for negative triggers to remain unconscious and rule over our behavior. So we want to become aware of the negative triggers so they don't rule us. For instance, I'll go to Island's restaurant all the time. And I used to surf as a kid. And I love watching their videos because a lot of it's about surfing. And when I'm watching it, it brings back joy to me. I can actually watch it and I can hear the water running underneath the board as the guys are paddling out. Like I can smell the ocean. I can feel everything that they're going through. It makes me feel good. It's a good trigger. And certain songs are a good trigger, okay? So we want to be aware of both the negative triggers so that we don't go off in front of our friends. And we want to know some of our happy triggers, some of those things, your safe place when you were a kid. Another place I would go is I would walk about a mile out into the hills and I'd sit down on the foxtails that were, by the time I sit down, they were up to my shoulders, and I had my dog Taffy with me, and the ocean breeze was blowing the foxtails. I was just dancing across the meadows there, and the sun on my face, wind blowing through my hair. I could see up and down the coast, and it was a safe place. Nobody could hurt me out there, right? That's a good memory. I love going to those places, and quiet meditation, go to those places so that you can bring back the happiness. Because while we might have had a lot of negative happening in our life, it's important that we realize the good. There's a lot of good moments in our life that we seem to have forgotten about sometimes. And it's just because the negative is so overwhelming. So we must dig in and remember, hey, where were those happy places? When was I happy? When did I feel safe? When did I feel the most alive? Okay, and go to those places. Okay, we got to be aware of the negative, but we want to know about our happy triggers. Okay, we want to get our emotions balanced. So don't be afraid of the triggers. You're going to have them. They're going to come up. Say, Kathy and I work with a lot of couples and a lot of single people, and they all have them, and they're all learning about them. And as they learn about them, they're able to talk with their spouses about their triggers. And they're able to come to an agreement, and they're working through these triggers, and they're becoming better spouses to each other. They're becoming better friends. They're just becoming better people overall. Okay. Don't be ashamed because you have triggers. There's nothing wrong with it. It's part of life. Like you say, you're not going to get away from it. But just recognize them and understand that nobody can make you do anything. That's usually something within yourself that's making you react the way you're reacting instead of responding. Okay. So next week we'll continue this on the trauma triggers. We got 2 more weeks of it. Like I say, we're going to do a chapter a month until the book's completed. So we'll continue this conversation next month on trauma triggers. I'm not sure what we'll talk about. My book's not in front of me, but anyways, I'll have that up there. Reminder that you can get my book now on Amazon. It's available in paperback. It's available on Kindle, and it's available on Audible. Okay, here's the deal with Audible. All right, I think I got about 10 more codes left. About 10 more codes for a free copy of my Audible book, Healing the Wounded Man Within, Wounded Child Within. Instant message me if you want that. The only thing I'm going to ask is I'll give you that code. You get a free Audible book with that code. Is when you get done listening to it, please write me a review on Amazon. That's the only thing I'm going to ask you. Other than that, I'll give you the code. The book, the Audible book will be yours for free. So just instant message me that you would like that, and I'll get it to you today or tomorrow. As soon as I get the message, usually, if I'm not busy, I will get the book to you. Okay. There's that. CourageousHealers.org. Please visit my website so you can see what's going on there. I don't know if any of you watched Fox last night. It's not about the news. It was about sex trafficking. There's a guy that's doing a lot of good work, and I'm actually going to reach out to him today. He's right up my alley, and I'm hoping maybe we can join forces with him. He made a lot of sense last night, and he put out there on national TV what I speak all the time to people at conferences and when I'm one-on-one with people, how we have to start educating our kids about sexual abuse and trafficking. It is imperative. And he's saying that they're being ran off of campuses. You're scaring the students talking about sex trafficking. That's a joke. He's saying that the government, we all must become more proactive with this because it is an absolute pandemic in the world, and it's only getting worse because our government basically is ignoring it. So courageoushealers.org. Look, if you want my life coaching services, go to changeyourlifestorynow.com. Check it out. Kathy and I are counseling a lot of couples right now. We're looking for more couples. I'm looking for one-on-one stuff for my life coaching. You know, if you don't need it, but you know somebody that does, please refer them to me and make sure you tell them that you referred them to me, and I'll get back with you about something I'll do for you. Okay. Also, we got the golf tournament coming up September 21st at Talkowitz Golf Resort, Talkowitz Creek Golf Resort. It's $75 a person before August 21st. After August 21st, it's $85 a person. It's a scramble, 7 o'clock shotgun start. We'll have raffle prizes. The price includes lunch, Taco Bell lunch, 2 drinks, range balls, and prize pool. So there's a lot that's included with it. And all the money, 100% of the proceeds goes to Courageous Healers Foundation. We're also looking for hole sponsors. It's $100 a hole. You can sponsor as many holes as you want, and you get a nice sign with your name on it. So it's $100 per hole. If you know somebody that might want to do that, that would be great. Just have them contact me. We're still working. It didn't happen this year. I still want to get a small facility and start doing this to the next level. If that's what God wants me to. It looks right now like we're still doing a lot of outreach work. Okay. And last but not least, Healing Courageously podcast. That's going to be the podcast we're starting. Healing Courageously will be the podcast. We're putting it together right now. I've got the name. I've got the artwork. Probably it's August, September. I'm hoping towards the end of September, I can actually get that launched. It's just taking a lot. It's new to me, so I'm having to do a lot of work to get it off the ground. I do have people helping me. So I think that's it. I'll let you go. Thanks for hanging in there long today. I keep on saying I'm trying to get this done in 15 or 20 minutes, but there's such deep subjects. It's pretty hard to do. Okay. Remember, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does, but more importantly, God does. Have a super blessed day and super blessed week. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week. Bye.